Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Bert lay sprawled on his bed, surrounded by the spoils of his incredible girls' day out with his mom, shopping bags overflowing with lacy dresses, silky blouses, pleated skirts, and all manner of pretty accessories. His mind buzzed with excitement as he replayed the events of the day, still hardly believing that it had all really happened. That after years of silent longing and secret shame, he had finally taken a concrete step towards embracing his feminine side. But amidst the joy and relief, a flicker of uncertainty nagged at him. As much as he adored expressing his girl self, Bert wasn't sure he wanted to actually be a girl full-time. The thought of physically transitioning, of taking hormones or having surgeries felt daunting and alien to him. He loved his male body with all its angles and edges. He didn't feel trapped in the wrong flesh, just restricted by the expectations placed on it sometimes. The narrow confines of masculinity that said he couldn't wear makeup or enjoy a rom-com or squeal over a cute puppy. No, Bert realized. He didn't want to change who he fundamentally was. He simply wanted the freedom to explore and celebrate all facets of his identity, masculine and feminine alike. He wanted to move through the world as a boy who also loved girly things, without judgment or ridicule. Bert mulled this over for a while, trying to put words to the complex feelings swirling inside him. Then suddenly it clicked. He didn't have to choose between male and female. He could embrace both. He could be a boy who cross-dressed and reveled in femininity without pursuing a full gender transition. Filled with renewed confidence in his path forward, Bert grabbed his phone and shot his mom a text. "I've been thinking. For now, I just want to experiment with girls' clothes and makeup sometimes." His phone pinged with her swift reply. "Of course, sweetie. There's no one right way to express your identity. You can present however you feel." Bert smiled, his heart swelling with love and gratitude for his endlessly supportive mother. He knew he was so fortunate to have a parent who not only accepted but actively encouraged him to explore gender beyond society's rigid binary. As he began putting away his mountains of new girly acquisitions, another idea occurred to Bert. If he was going to start dressing up and going out as a girl sometimes, maybe he should come up with a female name to use on those occasions. A name that captured the feminine essence he wanted to embody. He considered the names of some of his female heroes, both real and fictional. Audrey, after Audrey Hepburn, the epitome of classic elegance and grace. Hermione for the brilliant, bold witch from his beloved Harry Potter books. Buffy, as in the badass vampire slayer. But none of them quite fit. He wanted something that felt more like him, or rather, like her. The softer, daintier side of himself he was just beginning to let out. Bert absently opened up one of his favorite fashion blogs for inspiration as he pondered, scanning photos of willowy models in dreamy dresses and skirts. One pic in particular caught his eye. A vintage-style shot of a fresh-faced young woman with flowers in her hair, the name Evelyn written in curling script beneath. "Evelyn," Bert whispered to himself, testing out the sound and feel of it on his tongue. It was an old-fashioned name, ladylike and genteel, calling to mind prim white gloves and tinkling teacups. But it had an undercurrent of quiet strength, too, a certain dignity. Yes, Bert decided, Evelyn suited her perfectly. When he was all dolled up in lace and lipstick, when he let his inner dame out to play, that's who he would be. The next morning, Bert could hardly sit still at the breakfast table, eager to tell his mom about the new moniker for his feminine persona. "I've decided on a name for when I'm dressed as a girl," he announced. "Evelyn, what do you think?" His mom beamed at him over her coffee mug. "Why, that's just lovely. Such a classy, vintage sort of name. It suits you, or should I say, it suits her." She winked. Bert blushed, still getting used to having this part of himself openly acknowledged. "I thought so too. I can't wait to take Evelyn out for a spin." "Well, there's no time like the present," his mom said. What do you say we have a little fashion show right now? You can raid your new wardrobe and debut a few cute looks for me." Bert jumped up from the table so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. "Really? Yes, let's do it." He dashed to his room and started pulling out skirts and dresses, holding them up to himself in the mirror with giddy delight. After much deliberation, he settled on a flouncy yellow sundress patterned with little white daisies. Next came a lightly padded bra, which his mom had thoughtfully picked up for him yesterday, anticipating that he might want to create a hint of curves. Bert giggled as he fastened the hooks, marveling at the alien but not unpleasant sensation of straps digging into his shoulders and underwire cupping his flat chest. Then he shimmied into the dress, relishing how the hem swished playfully around his knees. He slipped on a pair of white sandals, accented with dainty bows, and carefully selected a headband topped with a big yellow silk flower to match. Bert paused by his dresser, eyeing the tubes of mascara and lip gloss he'd earned from his Sephora haul. He was dying to try them, but worried about his lack of technique. He'd pored over online makeup tutorials for ages, but had never actually attempted to apply any himself. As if on cue, his mom called from the hallway. "Need any help with hair and makeup, sweetie? I'm happy to give you a crash course." Bert opened the door to reveal his mom standing there, a proud grin on her face as she took in his pretty floral ensemble. "Oh, honey, don't you just look darling, like a perfect little garden fairy." Blushing at the compliment, Bert held up a mascara wand and lip gloss questioningly. "Maybe a little help to start? I don't want to end up looking like a clown on my first try." "I'm never one to turn down playing beauty parlor," his mom exclaimed. "Come on, let's doll you up." Bert followed her into her bedroom, where she sat him down at her vanity. As she assessed the shadows and blushes, his mom asked casually, "So, should I call you Evelyn while you're dressed like this?" Bert considered it for a moment before shaking his head. "No, I think just Bert is fine for now. Evelyn can be like my alter ego, my secret girly identity I get to slip into sometimes. But I'm still me underneath, whether I'm wearing pants or pantyhose." His mom stroked his hair affectionately. "That makes perfect sense, sweetie. There's no need to draw firm lines. Bert and Evelyn can coexist in whatever way feels right to you." She planted a quick kiss on his forehead. "Now hold still while I apply this mascara." Under his mother's expert guidance, Bert gradually morphed into Evelyn. A few swipes of mascara made his lashes look thick and full. Shimmery pink shadow brightened his eyes, while petal pink blush and gloss gave him a sweet, flushed look. His mom gently brushed his hair into a more feminine style, securing it back with the flowery headband. Finally, she held up a hand mirror for the big reveal. "There! What do you think of Miss Evelyn?" Bert could only gape at his reflection, scarcely believing the gammon creature looking back at him was himself. With a wig and a little contouring, he could easily pass for a real girl. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. I'm so pretty," he said wonderingly. "I never imagined transforming this much was even possible." His mom moved to stand behind him, her hands on his shoulders as they both gazed at Evelyn in the mirror. "Indeed you are, my dear. But then you were always beautiful, inside and out. This is just a different way of letting that light shine." Bert felt misty-eyed at her tender words, once again blown away by how lucky he was to have such an incredible ally in his mom. Exploring his identity would have been so much harder, so much scarier without her unwavering love and support. Over the next few months, Evelyn became a regular weekend guest in the Peterson household. Every Saturday, Bert would wake up early, practically vibrating with anticipation, and begin his ritual transformation. He'd start with a long, luxurious bubble bath, taking his time to shave from head to toe until he was silky smooth all over. Then he'd carefully select an outfit from his ever-expanding feminine wardrobe: frilly skirts, flowery dresses, cute rompers, and jumpsuits. Next came the piece de resistance: getting his makeup just right. After plenty of practice and a few YouTube tutorials, Bert had become quite skilled at painting his face, even mastering some advanced techniques like winged liner and contouring. He reveled in watching himself change in the mirror, his features softening and shifting until Evelyn emerged, all dolled up and ready to be seen. The thrill of becoming her, of giving external form to this secret facet of himself, never got old. Some weekends, Bert would spend the whole day flouncing around the house in Evelyn mode, watching rom-coms with his mom or trying out new hairstyles and nail art designs. Other times, emboldened by how convincing he looked, he'd venture out into the world, albeit sticking to places where he was unlikely to run into anyone from his day-to-day life. The first time he worked up the nerve to walk into a coffee shop as Evelyn, Bert's heart felt like it might pound right out of his chest. He kept his eyes downcast as he placed his order, certain that everyone must be staring at the obvious imposter in their midst. But when the barista handed him his iced chai with a cheerful, "Here you go, miss," Bert almost burst into tears of relief and joy. He had been seen as he hoped to be seen, acknowledged as the girl he sometimes was. It was exhilarating and affirming in a way he hadn't even realized he craved. As Bert entered his early 20s, his confidence in expressing his feminine side continued to grow. The weekends he spent as Evelyn became the highlight of his life, a cherished escape from the pressures and expectations of living as a man in a society with rigid gender norms. But as much as he loved his Evelyn time, Bert knew he couldn't keep her confined to stolen moments and secret outings forever. If he wanted to live as his most authentic self, he needed to start sharing this part of his identity with the other important people in his life. He decided to tell his dad first. Though they had never been as close as Bert and his mom, he knew his father loved him unconditionally. Still, when the moment came to actually say the words, Bert found himself uncharacteristically tongue-tied.
"Dad, there's something I need to tell you,"
he began, twisting his hands together nervously.
"Something I've kept hidden for a long time, but I'm ready to share now."
His dad set aside the newspaper he'd been reading, giving Bert his full attention.
"What is it, son? You know you can tell me anything."
Bert took a deep, fortifying breath.
"The thing is,
sometimes I like to dress up as a girl. I've been doing it in secret for a while now, and it just feels right. It's like I'm able to express a different side of myself." For a moment, his dad just blinked at him, processing. Then he cleared his throat gruffly.
"Well, that's not what I was expecting to hear on a Sunday morning. You're saying you're one of those trans people?" No, it's not like that," Bert rushed to clarify. "I don't want to be a woman full-time. My male identity is still a core part of who I am. I just also really enjoy embracing my feminine side sometimes, too. I call her Evelyn." He smiled shyly.
His dad rubbed a hand over his stubbled jaw, looking perplexed but not upset.
"Huh. I can't say I really understand it, but I suppose it's not hurting anybody. You're not about to start wearing dresses to the office, are you?" "No, definitely not," Bert assured him. "This is just something I do sometimes in my personal life. I'm still the same Bert you've always known. I'm just letting you see a little more of me now." "Well, okay then."
His dad reached out and clapped him on the shoulder, a bit awkwardly but with obvious affection.
"You know I love you no matter what, kid."
Bert felt a huge weight lift off him at his dad's acceptance. He knew the concept of a part-time crossdresser son would take some getting used to, but the fact that his father wasn't rejecting him outright meant everything. Emboldened by this positive reaction, Bert began to open up to more and more people about his feminine persona. His close work friend Jim was taken aback at first, but quickly recovered and asked if Bert and Evelyn would like to go shopping together sometime. His childhood best friend Greg needed a little more explanation to wrap his head around it, but ultimately just shrugged and said,
"Hey, man," or, woman, you do you. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me."
Not everyone was quite so on board with Bert's gender-bending ways. A few macho guys made snide comments questioning his masculinity, and his great-aunt Pearl clutched her pearls in scandalized horror when he showed up to a family barbecue with light makeup on. But for the most part, Bert found himself pleasantly surprised by how readily his inner circle accepted Evelyn as just another facet of who he was. It seemed that the people who truly loved him were willing to love all of him, pencil skirts, pantyhose, and all. As he entered his mid-20s, Bert began to long for a romantic partner who would embrace both his masculine and feminine sides. He wanted someone who would see Evelyn not as a weird quirk to overlook, but as a beautiful, valuable part of the whole package. He met Liana at, of all places, a work conference on accounting software. She was bright, vivacious, with a wicked sense of humor that immediately drew Bert in. They bonded over their shared love of terrible puns and 90s rap music. On their third date, Bert decided it was time to reveal his alter ego. He was falling hard for Liana, and he needed to know sooner rather than later if his cross-dressing would be a deal-breaker for her.
So, there's something I feel like I need to tell you, he said as they strolled hand in hand through the park. I hope it won't change how you feel about me, but I'd understand if it did.
Liana looked at him with concern. Bert, you're kind of freaking me out. Just tell me. I promise to keep an open mind. He took a deep breath, then let it all spill out. His lifelong fascination with femininity, his first faltering steps into cross-dressing, how Evelyn had become such an integral part of his identity. Through it all, Liana listened attentively, not saying a word. When he finally finished, there was a long, nerve-wracking pause. Then, slowly, a smile spread across Liana's face. Bert, she said softly. That's all? She squeezed his hand. Just so you know, I would love to meet Evelyn sometime. She sounds fabulous. Bert thought his heart might burst with happiness and relief. Not only was Liana not put off by his revelation, she was actively interested in getting to know his feminine side. He couldn't believe his incredible luck in finding such an open-minded, accepting partner. Over the next few months, the two of them would spend hours experimenting with different makeup looks and hairstyles, giggling like schoolgirls at the results. Liana helped Evelyn refine her fashion sense, steering her away from the very costumey pieces toward outfits that were more passable. Sometimes, just for fun, they'd get all dolled up together and hit the town, just two giggly girlfriends out for a night of dancing and cocktails. Bert never ceased to be amazed by how natural and right it felt to navigate the world as a woman on Liana's arm. In those moments, the usual anxiety and self-consciousness he felt as Evelyn melted away, replaced by pure joy and freedom. Of course, it wasn't always easy. There were times when Bert struggled with reconciling his masculine and feminine identities, times when he worried that he was somehow deceiving people by moving through life as a man while secretly harboring a female self. But Liana was always there to talk him through those moments of self-doubt, reminding him that there was nothing shameful or inauthentic about his duality. "You're not two different people, babe," she'd say, running her fingers through his hair soothingly. "You're one complex, multifaceted, beautiful human who expresses themselves in more than one way. There's nothing wrong with that." With Liana's steadfast love and support, Bert grew more and more comfortable with his identity as a sometimes cross-dresser. And when, on a starlit beach in Hawaii, she dropped to one knee and asked him to spend the rest of his life with her, he knew he had found his perfect match. Their wedding was an intimate affair, just close family and friends who had proven themselves to be allies. Bert and Liana kept things pretty low-key and traditional, with one notable exception. At the reception, after a few champagne toasts, Bert ducked away and changed into a stunning white gown, emerging to delighted gasps as Evelyn. Hand in hand, the beaming newlyweds took to the dance floor for their second first dance, this time as wife and wife. As they swayed in each other's arms, Bert felt happier and luckier than he ever could have imagined during those long-ago years of loneliness and confusion. He finally understood what his mom had been trying to tell him all those years ago, during their very first girls' shopping day. There was no single right way to be a man or a woman, no script you had to follow based on what was between your legs. The only thing that mattered was staying true to yourself, whatever that looked like. For Bert, it looked like this, sometimes suiting up in a sharp tux, and sometimes slipping into a slinky cocktail dress. Sometimes being a dutiful husband who mowed the lawn and took out the trash, and sometimes being a giddy wife trying out the latest nail art trends with his bride. He was both, and he was neither, and he was entirely, unapologetically himself. As the wedding guests joined them on the dance floor, twirling and laughing and celebrating a love that transcended all conventional boundaries, Bert caught his mom's eye across the room. She was beaming at him, tears sparkling in her eyes, looking at the man and woman her child had become with more pride and adoration than he'd ever seen. He knew then, with bone-deep certainty, that he wouldn't trade his unorthodox path for anything. Being Bert, being Evelyn, being everything in between, it had led him here, to a life more vibrant and fulfilling than he'd ever dared to dream of. A life where he was free to be every version of himself, with a partner who cherished each and every one. As a little boy, he had often felt like he was somehow wrong, somehow broken, for the fantasies and yearnings he harbored. But now Bert knew the truth. There had never been anything wrong with him. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.